Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop. Today I thought I'd introduce you to the power plant for the 67 Valiant. Again, just to kind of recap, the car's being made for drag and drive stuff. So it's going to have to be street driven, it's going to have to behave in traffic, it's going to have to tow a small trailer, all of those things, as well as it's going to have to make, hopefully, 9-second passes down the quarter mile. So the class that I've chosen to compete in, and if I've learned one thing about attending Bonneville, you choose your class. You don't build a car and see how you do. You figure out what class you can afford to be the most competitive in, and that's kind of what I'm doing here. So I don't have the budget for, twin turbos or, pro chargers and all of that kind of boosted stuff. And I'm not really a nitrous guy. So I chose to run in the small block, naturally aspirated class. And so that's what we've got here. For Hot Rod Drag Week, Rocky Mountain Race Week, and Sick Week, all of the rules say 430 cubic inches or smaller, unless it's a Hemi. And if it's a Hemi, then you're automatically in big block, regardless of displacement. So what we've got here is a LS7 based motor. And I know it's another LS motor in another non-Chevy car. And you know what? I'm over it. This was the cheapest way to make decent horsepower to get me in the nines. Could I have done it with a Hemi? Absolutely. Would I have liked to? Absolutely. Would it have cost me $10,000 to $15,000 more? Absolutely. So I've gone this route with this. This is a 427. It's a Concept Performance LSR block, so it's an all aluminum race block. It's not a GM block. And we're using Brodix heads on it and stuff. And I'll go through it in some detail and just kind of give you an idea of what I'm doing and what I expect to do. And then I do have some dyno information, engine dyno info on this that I'll share with you as well. Okay, so as I was saying, this is a Concept Performance aluminum block engine. They call it the LSR. And I'm using a high ram Holley intake on it, and as you can see, I actually have the heads taped off because the intake is undergoing some modifications, and I'm just sticking it on there to give you an idea what this is going to look like when it's installed in the car. So what we're looking at here basically is an engine that I bought from the folks at Late Model Engines, in Texas. Did some research, and would I have loved to have a Steve Morris engine or, a Nelson Racing engine? Yes, absolutely. Do I have the money for those engines? No. So I went this route. I'm very impressed with the folks at LME. Their processes are really good. I think they build a really high quality part. They've been great to work with. And so this is where I began. The whole assembly has been fully blueprinted, balanced. The block's been deburred and line honed and all of that stuff. It's done all on a 4-axis CNC. And then the entire engine has been assembled and everything checked and run on the dyno. But basically what this is, it's a LSR block. It's rated for 1,500 horsepower. It's got 6-bolt mains. It's got priority main oiling. And it's a pretty stout piece, and it's actually much better than I even really need, because for an NA build, this isn't going to make anywhere near 1,500 horsepower. The rods in it are CompuStar Extreme from Cali's. Pistons, it's got Molly Motorsports forged pistons in it with tool steel wrist pins. And it's got a 1 millimeter, 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter ring pack. The heads are Brodix, actually, even though they're engraved LME, if you can see that. They're actually a Brodix head. And there's the Brodix right there. And these heads are their BR7 series. It's got nice billet valve covers. They're machined to accept the Crower or rockers that are in it. The camshaft in it is a low lash LS cam from Iski. It has a double roller timing chain. It's got Morel solid tie lifters in it. It's got Cometic head gaskets, all ARP bolts, a milling oil pump, all of the good stuff in it. The ATI balancer, the Corvette balancer, all the good parts on it. So, but you know, like any race engine, it's been run and it's complete. It made 727 horsepower, I think, on the dyno at LME, and I'm hoping that's going to get my Dart or Valiant down into the 9s. I expect the car's going to probably weigh somewhere around 2,900 pounds with me in it. And so I think that should put me in the 9s, but we'll see. So now what I have to do is, like I said, I'm doing some modifications to the intake manifold, which I'm going to actually show in another video. But basically what I'm doing is I'm just cleaning up the inside of this cast manifold. When you get this from Holley, it's fairly rough cast. And, you know, I don't know that this is going to make a ton of difference. But even if it makes a little bit of difference, I've smoothed this all out and kind of cleaned it up and just generally gone through it. And so I've got to wash it real thoroughly and then reassemble it all. It's got the really nice billet valley cover in there, and that is specifically for these blocks. It won't fit a standard LS7 block, but it's got nice dash 12 ports on it, so I've got lots of great crankcase venting, and I think I'm going to bring the lines out of that and attach them here as well, and then that all goes to a Motion Raceworks catch can system. So that's kind of the motor and what we're doing with it. I've got the flex plate installed, and I'm still now working on the oiling and stuff. So as you can see, the block has a hole machined in it down here for the dipstick. Well, that's great, but it's also got a custom-made Moroso oil pan on it. It's not actually custom. It's a F-body Moroso pan. And I'll just rotate the block around here a little bit and kind of show you what I'm doing. Pardon the shaky camera work as I'm doing this, but I'm doing this alone and with one hand. So basically what we're doing here, the dipstick is going to mount into here, but I have to figure out with the Moroso oil pan where the dipstick is, where, you know, mark it for full and a quart low and all that stuff, because the dipsticks don't come pre-marked because everything's custom, right? So what I'm going to do is, and I'll probably make a separate video on this, is I'm actually going to measure the distance between the windage tray here and the bottom of this gasket where the oil pan goes on, figure that distance out so that my oil level is just below this windage tray. And just rough measurements, it looks like that's about 1.75 inches or so. So I'd like the oil level just a little below this windage tray just to keep it out of the crank and stuff. And so we'll see how that is going to go. And like I said, I'll probably make a separate video on that later. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on. So I have to then figure out how much oil the engine is actually going to hold once I figure out what level I want it to. And then I'm probably going to have to drill and tap this dipstick hole so that it'll accept. The dipstick gets mounted with a fitting like this. And so I'm going to have to drill that out, and that's a 1/4-inch pipe thread. So I'm going to have to drill that out and get that in there without getting the inside of the motor all full of aluminum, but shouldn't be too hard. It's pretty straightforward. I'll just put a grease-covered towel in there, and it'll catch all the chips. And so that's the next step. And then also making sure that up here I've got header clearance for the dipstick, because I don't know exactly where the headers are going to go. I have them here, but I got custom-made headers from the folks at Ultimate, and so they'll go on here, and we'll kind of finagle the dipstick. And like I said, that'll be another video. But I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what I'm building for the Valiant and kind of the goal behind it. It's going to be a dual fuel motor. So when we're on the street and pulling the trailer, going riding between tracks, it's going to run on 91 octane pump gas. And then when we're at the track and racing, it's going to switch over to C16 from VP. And so I'm only going to use one set of injectors and one set of fuel rails, but I'm going to devise a system of valves so that I can turn one set of fuel off and the other one on, and then I'll just select the tune in the Holley Dominator, and away we go. So that's the plan anyway. We'll see if it actually all comes to fruition, but that's the plan for now. So I'm going to go to work and do some measuring and stuff on this oil pan, kind of get some stuff figured out, and maybe when I understand what I'm going to do, I'll bring you back and show you that. Okay, we're using one of these self-leveling lasers. So it's you can move this around and the laser stays leveled within reason. And so once we find, level, then what we do is we line up the laser on the lowest part of the windage tray, and you can't really see the laser. I can see it on here. I don't know if you can or not, but you can see it's right there. You can see the laser's right there. Same thing in the back. The laser's dead on these openings in the bottom of the windage tray. So that tells me the distance between the windage tray and the top of the oil pan. So let's just measure that real quick. And if everything I've done before falls true, it should be about 1.75 inches. And let me see if I can do this. Switching hands, filming by yourself. So yeah, I don't want to get the camera in the way of the laser there, but yep, you can see. So we're 1.75 inches. So that's about where I want the oil level to be in the oil pan. So again, whether you use a plumb bob or a laser or whatever you want to do, you get the same results. And that's how you determine not only what level of oil you want in the oil pan, but also where to mark the dipstick. Because when you put the dipstick in this thing, let me just grab the dipstick. And this is an unmodified dipstick that I can't remember if I got this from, honestly don't remember. I think it came from Summit. So obviously this dipstick has to be fitted, and I've got to drill that out. So now I can determine also where on here I want the mark to be on the dipstick for my oil level. So if I say that I'd like my oil level to be just below the windage tray, and I know that this green mark is basically the windage tray, I can just, what I'd probably do is just take a straight line and just go straight across from here and go, that's my oil level. But what I still need to figure out is how far I want this to stick up. As you see here, it's like way up above the valve cover. Don't think I want it up that high, although I would like it above the headers. So we'll see how that goes. I still have to put the header in there and make sure that this isn't in the way of one of the header tubes. It's kind of in between the back two cylinders. I think it's going to be okay, but I got to double check all that stuff just to make sure, because it just sucks when you go ahead and you build all this and you thread this and get this tube cut to exactly the right length and get everything the way you want it, and then you find out, oh, it doesn't fit and it's got to be bent, or you got to use a different one or whatever. And so, but I think this is going to work fine, and this is one of the locking styled caps that, you know, won't come out under pressure and stuff like that. So not that I think there's going to be a lot of crankcase pressure in this motor because of the venting that we're doing. I'm not using a vacuum pump on it though, so, you know, every little bit helps, right? So some of you may be wondering what this little contraption is. Well, this car is going to run a motor plate and a mid plate, and when you do that, it's always good to have a front to rear stabilizer bar, so this to keep the motor from going front to rear. And so what this came from Motion Raceworks, and once we get the car back from paint shop purgatory, we're going to determine the length of this bar. This is just a chrome moly tube that I can't put into this fitting with one hand. Let me try that again. Wow, Gary. Have another coffee. For good, there we go. So this will tie back onto the frame of the car someplace and basically just help keep the motor, you know, front to rear in position all the time, and take the stress and the bending out of the motor plate and the mid plate. So that's what that's all about. And as you can see, it's all loose and just mocked up in there because, frankly, I don't know exactly where it's going to go yet. So we get the dipstick done, and then I've got to put the crank sensor in there. This is a 58X reluctor in here, so I've got a sensor to go in there, and once that sensor's in, then I can fit the starter and make sure that it's got proper clearances and everything, and get the shims right and get all that done. So that's all next. Yeah, so as you can see, I had to put a bend in the dipstick because it wouldn't clear the head. It wouldn't even go in the hole when it was straight. It would run right into either the head or the header, and then it can't go in like that because that blocks the access to this spark plug. So I bent it, and it's going to come over about here, and then down here, if you can kind of see where I'm pointing, I'm going to make a bracket that bolts to the block here and goes around the tube and just kind of puts it in the correct position, something along those lines. I want to make sure that I, you know, don't block access to the spark plug wire, don't have this thing rubbing up against the spark plug wire, that sort of stuff. So it's pretty tight in here, but it's doable. So now that, you know, I've got that on there and I know where it's going to fit according to the headers and everything else, now I'll take the header off, take this all out, and I'm going to drill, and I got a 7/16 drill that block in the hole in the block, and then tap that to accept the fitting, and then the dipstick goes through this fitting, and gets secured with a collet. And I don't know if I have the parts around here for that. Nope, I got my taps and stuff, but yeah, I'll have to figure out where I put those. But anyway, this all goes together, and hopefully that'll solve that problem. So I'll bring you back. Okay, so here we go. I've threaded the hole, and I've installed the fitting and used some of this Loctite 545 thread sealant, so it's pretty much in there permanently. And then I cleaned out the inside. I didn't get much for chips and stuff on the inside, but there were a few. I sprayed that all out with WD-40, got it all cleaned up the floor. Everything's good. So now we're ready to install the dipstick. And the dipstick goes on with this sort of an arrangement. And, you know, it goes down through here, and then we'll figure out kind of exactly where it's going to have to go, probably something like that. And then we just tighten this down, set the depth here, and just tighten that down, and then we have a dipstick. So again, I'll go back in here. Let me just move you back a little bit. Whoops. I'll go back in here with a laser and find out where the oil level wants to get marked on the dipstick, and we'll kind of go from there. I may want to shorten that dipstick tube a little bit more and just have a little more depth here on with the dipstick coming down into the pan. I'd like the dipstick to come down to maybe halfway past this brace, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's easy enough to do. I can just shorten this tube, and you know, that'll allow this to push down in there farther. Right now, if I run it all the way in, you can hear it hits the windage tray. But if I cut this dipstick off another inch, I can push it down another inch, and that'll probably be about good. So we'll see how it goes. So that was it. Wasn't that scary at all. Managed to get that drilled and tapped, and I like to use this stuff, and you've seen this before on my channel, especially on aluminum. Either WD-40 or this anchor lube works really good when you're cutting threads. But doing that pipe tap, you know, NPT tap is tapered, right? Because this is a pipe thread, so it's tapered and it seals on the taper. And so that tapered reamer that I borrowed from my buddy Rick, that really made that thread cut like butter. It just cuts so nice and smooth. You didn't have a tapered pipe tap, whereas that's this right here before it hasn't even been cleaned up yet. So you didn't have this tapered tap trying to, you know, tap a taper in a straight hole. So it worked really good. And thanks again to my buddy Rick for loaning that to me. You can see the remnants of the anchor lube left on here. But yeah, all worked out good. I'm super happy with it. And so now we just got to keep fitting it and make it good. Okay, well, I've got the dipstick installed and the headers in place. And as you can see, I'll just kind of get you in here a little tighter. It's not too tight a fit. I think I've got clearance there for the spark plug. I may have to move this just a little bit to get that plug in. I may have to move this just a little closer to the header, but it's not a big deal. And then down in the bottom, you can see the fitting and everything. This is all captured. I can't get my fingers in there because the headers are in the way, but this is all tightened down and captured, and everything's done. And so the dipstick is the locking kind. And I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but it's got a deal where you give it a bit of a twist and it locks into place, and then yeah, comes out. And then I got the length adjusted so that we'll just roll the motor over here. I got the length adjusted on the dipstick so that it's going to be pretty good for measuring oil level. Is kind of what a dipstick's all about. So as you can see, the dipstick is well down into the oil pan. The level of the oil is going to be just below this windage tray. So oil level will be somewhere in here where it's full, and I'm not going to worry about putting a quart down mark on it or anything. The engine's going to hold roughly 8 quarts of oil, and so I think that dipstick in that location is going to work just fine. So that's the installation of the dipstick on a Concept Performance LSR block. So as always, thanks very much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I'd love to hear from you if you have a better way to do things or questions, whatever. Feel free. It'd be great. So again, thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time.